My name is John Miner, and I'm a Microsoft MVP. I'm going to share my screen and talk a little about myself, and then we'll talk about today's topic, okay? And the reason why I'm talking about myself, because there's other topics that might be relevant or you might want to learn more about. We're going to talk about data types in Microsoft Fabric, okay? There's not a one-to-one match between this SQL and or whatever target source database you're going to go to Fabric, okay? So for instance, if we see the data types in a warehouse are basically the same data types you have in Parquet, and that's not surprising because it's built on Delta, right? The Delta format. So if we look, for instance, an unsupported type would be geography. How do we handle that? We'll talk about that, okay? Second thing is I'm an avid writer. I've been writing for the last 10 plus years. About 150 articles out there with my name. So if you look into MS SQL tips, a lot on Databricks and Azure and SQL databases and Azure Data Factory. It's still very relevant because we're going to be talking about that today. What's going to be really relevant for you is the last two articles I posted on SQL Server Central, okay? And I will actually be finishing it up. So there's two more articles that have to be posted. Like anything, my ambitions are usually greater than the amount of time I have. I just post it in the chat window. So the first one talks about generative AI. So you haven't started using generative AI, please do, okay? For instance, we have to take the source tables from SQL Server we're going to talk about to make them Fabric, but there's not a one-to-one correspondent. Now, for 10 or 15 tables like AdventureWorks, not a big deal. You can do it by hand. But if you have a real database, okay, that has 500, 1,000 different tables, doing that by hand could be quite a long process, okay? Nice thing about generative AI is you can build little functions, okay, in Python to help you do that translation process. So that's what this is. There's a full load article. We're going to talk about full loading versus incremental. And we're also going to talk about setting up, okay, the data gateway. They call it the on-premise data gateway, but it can also be in the cloud, okay? Last but not least, we're going to talk about, you know, this is basically what we've been building for years called the modern data platform, okay? And in this, we have a virtual machine running SQL Server. That's our source. Fabric is our target. We always need some capacity in Fabric, and we have some storage. So we'll all talk about that, and we'll talk about pipelines, okay? So with that said, let me share the deck, and we'll get started. I'm going to hide my video. At the end, I'll turn it back on. That way it'll save a little bandwidth. Definitely sharing right now. And then let's share this guy. And let's make sure we're out of presenter view. Okay. So again, what are we talking about today? We're talking about the analytics foundation with Fabric Warehouse. So basically, you want to do some type of analysis, right? You need to have some type of star schema out there or some location where you have a single pane of glass of all your data, okay? And that's we're going to talk about how to build that in Fabric using the warehouse, okay? My name's John Miner. I'm the senior data architect at Insight, which is a partner. I've been there for almost 8 years. I'm also MVP. If you want to ask any questions, send me john.miner@insight.com. Okay, so purpose. Is this brand new? And the answer is not really. A lot of it, some of it's been rewritten, especially the data warehouse is brand new. But the other components have been around, okay? So Fabric went to general availability in 2023, okay, November. And it's amazing how much has changed since then, okay? I could tell you back then you couldn't make like folders and move objects into folders, and there was deployment pipelines didn't work, and there was only, Spark notebooks. Now we have SQL notebooks. So there's tons of new stuff, okay? So I'm always learning. If you want to learn about Fabric, you have to keep up, okay? It's changing all the time. So there's 4 problems you can solve with Fabric. A lakehouse. What is that? It's the Spark engine, right? A warehouse. What is that? That's a SQL engine, right? Data science. Well, you think an ML flow, right? Some type of algorithm. You're going to do regression analysis, clustering, solving problems, right? Real-time analytics. Guess what? It's Event Hub. You're getting data in. You're going to get a KQL database, okay? Today, we're just going to focus on one, which is the Fabric Warehouse and how to create a framework, okay, to ingest data. Why do you want a framework? Well, say if I had those 800 tables I want to bring in, do I really want to write 800, Power Query data flow Gen 2s? Probably not. I probably want to write 3 or 4 and have it all metadata driven, okay? And we'll talk about how to do that. So we're going to go over some architectural diagrams. We're going to go over data ingestion. We're going to talk about why is metadata driven design important. We're going to talk about full load versus incremental loads and how to set up a hybrid configuration, okay? So this is a cool diagram I got from Microsoft. And guess what? We can do the lakehouse, we can do a warehouse, data science, and real-time analytics. Let's dive deeper, okay? Well, what's interesting is I talked to the product team recently, and this diagram here was released back in March of 2023. And guess what? It's still not accurate yet. What mounts is here supposed to have been mirroring. And what shortcuts, we haven't gotten shortcuts enabled yet for the data warehouse. Okay, so those are to be done. Yes, mirroring's around. It's in GA in most of them. I'm at our public preview in most of them, not GA yet. There are some things that you might want to use this design pattern that we're talking about in your own environment. For instance, say you have a, I don't know, in DB2, okay, IBM DB2, you could move the data to a warehouse by using an on-premise data gateway and use a metadata-driven design, okay? Now, how do you get the data in? I always like using pipelines. The fastest thing out there is the copy into command, okay? Once you're in a warehouse, how do you move data around? You can use stored procedures. You can also use T-SQL notebooks. They're both the same. Um, Everything now is distributed computing. So in the past, you would say, oh yeah, stored procedure is faster because it's compiled. Because it's distributed, I don't know how much faster it really is, right? And last but not least, in the warehouse, we have an endpoint. It's a read-write endpoint. But again, remember, it's a warehouse and it's built upon the Delta file format. And we also have Power BI, which is a semantic model. So let's talk about the Delta Parquet format or the Delta file format or Delta tables in general. What is a Delta table? A Delta table is a collection of Parquet files. And what it does, it makes, okay, basically files look like a database, okay? Are they really a database? Not really, okay? So say we do an insert. We get a new Parquet file. We also get a log file, which is a JSON file, says, hey, I did an insert. Same thing with an update. Same thing with a delete. So what it does is logically it takes all those files and all those logs and it gives you a point in time, the most current point in time representation of the data. And now you might have heard of time travel. Time travel means you can go back in time to look at a point in time. That's because you have all those logs, right? But once you start doing maintenance like vacuuming, okay, you lose some of the logs and therefore you can only go to a certain point in time, okay? So we can see that this is warehousing here. We got the engineering, which is basically the lake house, data factories here. We got data science, real time, and Power BI. But we can see that the one lake is all consistent there. What is one lake built upon? And that's a good question, right? If you read some of the articles I put on SQL Server Central, it's built upon Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. So you can do anything you want. Well, like right now, I'm coming up with something that's called Fabric Bytes on my LinkedIn channel. Okay, I write these LinkedIn posts. And guess what? In Fabric Bytes, I can use Python to upload files. I can also use Azure Storage Explorer. I can use PowerShell because why? It's still built on stuff that we've been using for the last 10 years. The only difference is Fabric is a one-place shop, okay? Basically, you can shop there one place. You can build a warehouse. You can build a lake house. You can do a combination of both, whatever you fancy. But you don't have to worry about setting everything up, okay? And that's why it's easier. Okay, so let's talk about data ingestion. One of my favorite tools is Fivetran. Okay, you don't need to use it for Fabric, but I just want to point it out to you because a lot of people use it. It's good for like, hey, I got something I need to get into Databricks. I want to replicate from Postgres. Guess what? You could do that with data pipelines, but the problem is, say you don't have the ability, okay, to do type 2. No one went ahead and put dates on there, okay? How do you know if something changed? Well, the easiest way is to look at the log, right? The log tells you, hey, a record has changed. And that's how Fivetran does it. It looks at the log and it writes over there. A lot of people use it for Snowflake too, okay? And again, I'm cloud agnostic. It's whatever the client wants to use, okay? Love Microsoft first, but I'm a consultant. I suggest, and then the client picks. Okay. The interesting thing is you can surface it using the analytic endpoint. And what's interesting, the way it works, if you look under the hood, it just basically copies everything over to storage, and then Databricks, it just does a copy into command. Okay, they haven't done that yet for the One Lake. They've done it so you can replicate to a directory, and then guess what? If it's a Parquet file, it will show up as a table or a Delta table. But yeah, Parquet Fivetran's a great tool, and I just want to mention it there because we're going to build something that's native tools, but this is a non-native remote tool. Okay. Okay, let's talk about metadata-driven design, why we want to do it, okay? Again, if we have 800 tables, we don't want to write 800 pipelines. We want to write a few and then have 800 entries to say, hey, move the data over, okay? So let's look at this diagram and let's go left to right, okay? So we have the source database. Now, regardless if you have a very large file that you're going to do incremental loads with or table versus a smaller table that we're going to do a full load, you always have to do a full load to start the process off. So we're going to have a schema called DBO, okay, or your RAW, whatever you want to call it. And I think in this one I call it RAW. Excuse me. And basically that's going to be a full copy. But for the incrementals, we start with the full copy. We still have to patch it, right? We have to patch it with the new data, right? Today's data, maybe. We're doing incremental loads daily. So we're going to use stage 0, which is going to be our incremental build. Okay. And we're building this in the same warehouse, but using different schemas. So we have stage DBO, okay, as our RAW as our, most current version. Stage 1, or I meant stage 0, is going to be our incrementals. Temp might be, hey, guess what? I want to also go ahead and, you know, combine some tables and come up with a view that's going to be in a final mark, okay? And you can think of these as different layers, right? We got the bronze layer, which is raw. And then what we're going to do is, the problem was most time people go ahead and they build the silver layer out and they drop the table and rebuild it. And what happens is there's downtime now. How do we eliminate that downtime? Well, there's no thing called a cinnamon, right? We had those in SQL. It's a pointer to a table or something. We could say, hey, refine dot, sales detail points to this table. And then when I load a different table in the background, repoint somewhere, that doesn't work. But we can use CTAS, okay? So create table as. So that allows us to take a copy of this and it runs really quickly because just copying that Delta file over, and we can use two schemas, stage 1, stage 2. And on top of that, we can not only mix in that raw bronze layer, which is our raw data, but we can also put some curated data there so that when we do have the silver layer, which is a presentation layer, we will just alter the views and the views will just point to either stage 1 or stage 2, okay? So this allows you to basically build a warehouse with limited downtime. Okay, and this is the most important thing. At the end, guess what? If you use Fabric, and it's there as a table, it can use direct lake. If you're not using Fabric and using some reporting software, and there's a lot of people out there like business objects, etc., Cognos, MicroStrategy, have a client, then guess what? Use it. As long as it's in your schema, your warehouse, you can report off it. Okay, so again, metadata driven design is really good because we're going to limit the amount of coding we have to do. In terms of where do you have to do some work? The metadata. It's going to be a lot of metadata. Okay, so let's talk about different schemas and then we'll eventually get to the demos, okay? So we're going to have metadata, okay? And these are some control tables. Like for instance, What is the jobs table? What is monitoring, right? We want to have some logging, right? Raw, complete copy of the data. That's that DBO. Stage one, incremental. Stage two, it's stage one, stage two. We're going to flip flop between them. We don't really care. We just want to say, hey, currently the views point at stage two. If I'm running the build script, guess what? Truncate, drop all the tables in stage one and rebuild them from raw, okay? And temp is going to create those gold tables that will get into refine. So the current, the aggregated tables, okay? So data pipelines. We're going to have a actual fabric warehouse called DW. And again, I'm using some naming conventions here. You can come up with your own. So NB means notebook, PL means pipeline. We can see as a fabric data warehouse for AdventureWorks Analytics. We can also see as a T-SQL notebook for AdventureWorks 2012 LT. We have a notebook to make the metadata. We have a notebook to make the refine layer. We have a data load step. So this is regardless if it's full or incremental, it's smart enough to know what to do. Then we have execute job steps. We'll talk about that. And there's a scheduled daily load. And I just recently added a new one today called schedule one-time load. Okay, we'll talk about that. Again, I'm tweaking this presentation a little. I should update the slide. Um, let's talk about generative AI, right? Problem, we want to get the sales LT from SQL Service on-premise to Fabric Warehouse. What a task. Well, we have to create tables, right? And there's certain things that are not allowed in tables. Like, for instance, identity is not supported. Also, certain data types are not supported. Primary keys and foreign keys are not really respected. We can put them in there if you're doing something that used to be called AI skills. Now they're called data agents, okay? But we basically have to create that metadata, and we also have to create the warehouse. If we had to do it for 800, it's a lot of work. If we did it with a tool such as generative AI, write a Python program, guess what? We can write it. Not only that, we can have it also become a notebook, an IPython notebook with T-SQL, okay? And I've actually done that. So that really, you know, cuts down the time to go to market. So let me show you really quickly, and I just want to be cognizant of time, which we have plenty of. Is it here? And again, I apologize. I just need to find where I put it. It might be here, and then SQL Server Central, and this guy, I think it is, and then code. Nope. So 22 code. One more. Maybe it's 21. Yeah, here we go. Gen I. Okay, I got too much. So let's open up the code really quickly now, just to not focus on it too much, but just show you what you can do. So when you open up a project like this, you can write very simple functions like read a text file, and it'll come back and read the text file. So let me file and then open this folder. It'll be a better way to do it, and select folder. Okay, here we go. So what do we have in here, right? We have the original script from SQL Server. This is a dump, right? It has a lot of stuff I don't need there. It's a whole database dump. We got a bunch of alters. We got a bunch of create types, so on. So what I do? Well, the very first pass, okay, and this is multiple passes, and this is simple code here, right? Is guess what? We're going to let me see where it is. So this one does a bunch of replacements, and I'm looking for the main program, which I think it's down here. Here we go. So basically, we're going to grab the file names, LT, and we're going to create temp1. And basically, we're going to read input, create some table statements, and write out the file. So we just want to clean it all up. So now we have just our create table statements, okay? And you can learn more about it by looking at this program. It's on, like I said, Steve Jones, who's SQL Server Central. It's out there, okay? And so basically, we still have constraints we don't want, okay? So how do we fix that? Well, we go back here. We say, okay, now we got this. We want to take temp1 and we go temp2. And we want to do UTF-8. And what we're going to do is read input, and we want to keep tables, write output. So we want to clean it up a little more. And now, see, guess what? We got it cleaned up. But we have some things that might not be good here. Like, for instance, a varchar, well, it's okay. But if we have like let me see if I can find something that might not be good. I don't see any end varchars here. Maybe look. Maybe a small int or something like that. Some of them will have to be changed, okay? And then last but not least is when we're done with this, okay, we want to write it into a notebook that we can just suck into Fabric, okay? And the last step is, guess what? We write the notebook. And so now we can see it was smart enough when I wrote the notebook to tell it, hey, it's basically a notebook for T-SQL. And we can see it's creating the customers, right? And so we can see unique identifiers supported, varchars, and so on. So basically, we're, a couple hundred lines of code. I was able to translate 12 different tables using generative AI versus doing it by hand. This would have saved a lot of work if it's 800 lines or 800 tables, okay? And I just want to make sure that, is there any questions? If you have any questions, just put the questions here and I will answer them when I get to it. Okay. So again, if you haven't used generative AI, please do. I use GitHub Copilot and it works pretty good. So the objects, what do we need for objects? I just showed you what I just was the output, right? There's the input. I brought it right into Fabric. It's a notebook. Okay. The only thing you have to do is change the warehouse. Okay. ROR. So ROR is basically, or DBO, right? ROR is here. It's based on the source system with changes for the warehouse, T-SQL. Okay. Stage of 1 and 2, we talked about that, is the C-task. Stage 0 is the incremental, and then refined is basically points to the correct stage, okay? So let's talk about the data gateway. Okay, the data gateway, is it your old-fashioned self-hosted integration runtime? And the answer is no. And the second thing is your linked services and data sets the same thing in Fabric? And the answer is no. And so that's something that you have to really, really be cognizant of, okay? So for instance, this one actually created a connection, okay, using, okay, the data gateway, DG for analytics, okay? But there's a lot of things to remember. For instance, don't forget about the OS, which means the operating system, Windows, and Azure firewall rules, okay? So I had to go fix those. 443 has to be open for the data gateway to work. Second thing is, we used to have this thing called trust certificate setting. Click it and boom. Guess what? It's not there. Okay, and let me show you how I figured that out. So if you come here and there's diagnostics, which one? I want to make sure I got it right. You can restart the gateway when you make changes. That's the most important thing when you're doing things. The gateway logs. So I'd have to sign in. Once I sign in, I can export the logs. And how did I know that there was an issue? Well, I'm going to show you the logs. I captured them and I'll show you how I fixed it. So if we go into, I think it's this one, but if it isn't, I apologize. We'll try the next one. Open. That's not it. Maybe it's this one. Okay. So, trust. Nope, it's not that one. It's one of these. Hang on. Gateway, configuration info, connectors, maybe it's runtime errors. Open. That's not it. Let's see if it's this one. This is just basically saying it's up. I apologize not knowing off the top of my head this is where it is, but I'm not going to spend more time on it. I'll just move on, but you can look into it. Look at the article. It points out where it is. I thought I knew off the top of my head where it was, but I don't see it here. This is pipeline diagnostics. Let's hit open. It's not that one. And system. So let's look. Date modified. Do I have date modified? These 310. Oh yeah, so these are all new dumps. Let's do this one. This might be it. Nope, that's not it. Okay, I apologize, but it's there. If you look for it, it's definitely there. The interesting thing is this, is that you'll find it there, and it'll say that the runtime is not available, okay? The interesting thing is you have to go ahead and change a config file for this, and the config file, okay, it's kind of embedded. So I think it's here, if I remember right, or it's a, maybe not x64. It's one up. This guy. And a lot of stuff, like I said, I went to, here it is, on-premise data gateway. And is there a bin? Bin, maybe. English. So one of the things I suggested for the product group is that while this is really now obfuscated, right? We have to figure out where it is and how to change it, right? I think an easy way to do this, instead of me trying to figure this out again, let's look at the code, right? I wrote this article, so let's go look at the article. It'll be really quickly. So under bin and on the SQL Server Central again, so SSC, and I think it might be this guy, and images. I showed you all those. Nope, it's going to be the next one I haven't written yet. So one more right here. Images. Okay, here we go. Awesome. So we're going to open with this, and we can see that we have to authenticate when we do this. Here's the register to gateway. We have to give it a key, and then we have the on-premise. And the problem is, see this, when we connect to it, it fails. Okay. We're like, what's going on? And I'm like, okay, maybe it's the port rules. So we have to put the RDP port rules in. Okay. And guess what? We also changed the setting rules for the windows. Okay, that works. And we dumped the gate logs. So if we're logged in, we can say export logs if it's still giving us errors. And you can see right here, it says the certificate chain was issued right here. This is a trust certificate issue, okay? How do we fix that? Well, I Googled it, and guess what? Or AI, try ChatGPT. Microsoft.powerbi.datamovement.pipeline.gateway.core.dll.configuration. So it's very complex, right? But once you find it, okay, there's a SQL trust service. You just have to put the name in, right? So program files, on-premise gateway, and then this the Microsoft Power BI data movement. So let's go see if we can figure out. So Microsoft Power BI, and then we'll get back to script because this is interesting, but it will be part of things that you'll have to go through to fix, okay? To sometimes get some of this to work, right? So we got gateway core. I'm looking for gateway core. So data movement, gateway pipeline dot gateway core. So pipeline dot gateway. You can see how much fun this is. So Microsoft Power BI pipeline gateway core dot DLL. Here we go. So send to and or open with. Come on. Show apps. Just notepad. Hit OK. Oops. I guess that won't work. This is the DLL, right? Is it not the right one? Let me look. .config. I didn't get the config. So it's the DLL. Let's do this. Star.config. Anyways, this will be half your battle is trying to set this up. And so I'm going to do .config. And here we go. See if I went and figure this out there. And what we can do now is if we look down here, there will be whatever the name is. So if we do 2022 guess what? We can see right here, SQL Trust, we have to put the name of this VM for SQL 22, because the data gateway happens to be on the same SQL box. Doesn't have to be, but that's how I set it up, okay? So sorry about that, a little off track, but yeah, once you get through all that fun stuff of setting the gateway up, then we can actually write some code. And let's get to it. So again, Microsoft has combined everything in there. One of the things I did ask the product group is some of these configs, so maybe have like a little UI in there to allow you to put some of this into the UI instead of actually trying to figure out which config file to do it in. But you know, once you get the gateway working, it works, right? So let's talk about sample job data. We talked about this in metadata job design. So there's two concepts. A job is a grouping of steps, and it's just like SQL jobs and SSMS, right? You got step one, step two, part of the job. So that's how we describe it. Now the main thing is it already knows where the source database is. We just need a source query. Why we have a source query, not a table name? Because remember, we might have to do translations. That geography point might have to be a convert char, whatever, 22 geography dot point of the point, right? So now we get a string back and convert it, right? So that's why we need that. And the target, we just basically need, it already knows where the target is, but we need the schema and the table. Everything else is syntax adding, it's describing it like it's a full. We need to know it's full. But the step description, I'm not going to use it there. It's just for people to understand it, right? So also, cool thing, I it only shows you, it orders the steps and only shows you which one's enabled. This allows you to debug. Like if you have to rerun something, you can turn everything off except for one job. Okay. Metadata objects. So, excuse me. We're going to have controls table, data sets table. This is a list of tables that be CTOS, jobs, logs. Okay, there's a view, code for staging. What is this? Well, this creates code that drops a table in the target, either stage one, stage two, creates a new table in target, and then updates the view in DPO. Okay, control table. Hey, guess what? What is the most recent control table? You know what I mean? If it's at stage one, stage two. And again, that happens to be for stages. You can put anything there. And again, this is inserts. And we don't get any blockings with inserts, okay? Appending to Delta table, when we do updates, you might get blocking, okay, for multiple things you're running. And then last but not least, we have user table. This gives us information. We'll talk more about that. So this is our pipeline main component, okay? It's called data load step, and we can see it. Start a script. We're going to pass it an object, and that object is that metadata, okay? And it basically is, JSON document. What does it take? It does the copy, okay? The script activity. Guess what? At the end, it scripts it and says, hey, start. Oh, I finished a copy successfully. Let's put it in a log file. Or I failed. So let's put it in a log file. Oh, by the way, if it's incremental, guess what? We have to run a piece of code afterwards, right? To go ahead and move it from that stage 0 and merge it into the raw zone. Okay, and then last but not least, again, two more failures or success, right? So 3 success points, which is a start, a finished copy, finished script, or 2 failures: failed on the copy, failed on the script. Job execution, a little more complicated, but has 3 inputs. Why do we need 3 inputs? What job it is? Guess what? We might want to break jobs into pieces. So we might want to run, okay, from, say we have 16 steps, 1 to 8 and 8 to 16. Now it goes maybe twice as fast, right? One of the things I don't like about Fabric compared to Azure Data Factory is you used to be able to see like how much loads going on the machine. You can get that from looking at Task Manager, okay, and seeing how things go. But basically what this does, it does a lookup, okay, of all the metadata, and it says for each step in the lookup, call the data pipeline. And if there's any errors, then it errors out, okay? Otherwise, it's success. And that's what this counter is. If it's an error, then increment the counter. Now, one of the things that's interesting about Data Factory is you can't say x equals x plus 1. So you have to say x equals y plus 1, and y is x y is equal to x, okay? So it's not simple as just x equals x plus 1. Last but not least, how do we get the change tracking table or incrementals? We have to have some way to do it. Now, you could say compare the whole table compared to the previous table. That's time consuming. I've done that before. Easier ways to use change table tracking. It came out in 2019. It's really cool. Okay, it allows us to go ahead and name it on the database and the tables. And then what we do is on the last version, we do a query to retrieve the data and then merge the table into the raw zone. Okay, so these are the functions that are supported. Okay, and I'll show you. So we got some demos to finish and then wrap it up. So we've talked about setting up the gateway. Okay, this is here. We're going to go to this in a minute. So can we run all these things? And the answer is yes, I could, but it takes a while. Okay, and the reason it just takes time, right? And so I did some of this ahead of time. So let's talk about talks, and this is the talk, and we'll go to the one-time load. And let's maximize this. So we'll open this up with Office. Okay, so we can see here that pipeline 1, okay, which is the DBO schema, okay, in AdventureX has 2 tables, okay? And then those 2 tables, it took 4 minutes to copy. Why? Copies are really a double copy, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And also, there's 12 total tables. The remaining 10 tables took 16 minutes, okay? So let's look at the details. One of the things I did talk about is, I'm looking for the right window, is the top, okay? So here's our capacity. We always need a capacity, need it started. We also have storage, right? When you go from Azure SQL Database to Fabric, it automatically allows you to use the storage in Fabric. For some reason, when going to Data Gateway, you need to define storage. So if we look at containers and we look at stage and we hit refresh, it basically just staged it here, some staging, right? And so we can see that with the data load step. If we go to copy data, okay, and again, we'll go to the data, we see this is our, basically, if we run this would work right now, this is one step. And if we hit Notepad and paste it in, we can see this is a single step, right? It's doing an address table and it's putting in a destination is the raw address table, okay? So that works, and I'm not going to save it. I just want to show you that. But the copy data, okay, the source, well, look, we're going through our connection, so it's on gated gateway. If we look at Azure SQL AdventureWorks 12, and what we're doing is we're doing the parameters of the table name and the source, right? Excuse me. And the reason why you probably want to change this, and again, I'm using this, but this could have been a query, right? And we probably would want to use the query if we had something that we had to manipulate. We didn't have to in AdventureWorks, so I didn't. So I put the source and table here, but you don't need to do that. And again, here's a destination. And we can see that the truncate, because it's a full load, we want to truncate it before loading. Mappings, we're not going to worry about because it's automatically going to map the strongly typed source and destination. But the interesting thing is, see, it uses stage here. It has to use a stage, okay? So that's why everything takes longer. So if we look at the monitor, and I ran this before this class, and we look at refreshed, hopefully it came through here. The one time, here's the one time. And let's see if I can get into it. So now we can see, remember I said job 1 has 2 of them. So now we can go to the output, hopefully, run for the job. Okay, and this one, it actually ran lookup, and then for each lookup, it did a full load. Excuse me. And if we look at the data load, we can see this copy command, right? Which is generate, and it's the copy. We can look. And because it's not running, it might not tell me the stages, but we can see that it actually, let's maximize and take a look. Okay, so we read Data written is the number of bytes, right? Read 0 rows copied. I had to bring something. This might not be a good example if there's no data in there. So let me close out of there. And let me go back to this guy. Let's go back one more. Right here. And now what we're going to do is look at job 2 because I know this one definitely has tons of data. So I'm going to run this guy. And basically what I want to show you is that the full load step of this, excuse me, on the copy, okay, we can see that this is the data written. There's 33 rows. So we can see there's 233 rows. Let's see if it shows us both. So, so the source is, see right here, blob. So we have 2 steps. See, the first, we basically went from the source as Azure SQL database and we went to blob storage. Okay, and that took, okay, duration of 3. I
Hey,
don't know what
sorry,
that
John.
means. Yep.
If you click on the name of the activity, you will see what you're looking for, because I had the same problem many times. It's not the same as Data Factory, but click on the name at the bottom, just the name of the
Yeah, we
activity.
can try. Yeah, we can try that too. Thank you. Yeah, and so we can see, I was looking in here, we can see that the staging took 17 seconds, okay? So copying from on-premise to staging took 3 seconds. But then that's Parquet, right? It's creating a Parquet file. But then going from the Parquet file and going to the staging duration takes another 17 seconds on top of it, okay? So that's where the time is. So we're doing a double copy. Just remember that, and that's why you might have to ramp up the size of your VM and run more things in parallel to go faster, okay? But good point. Where are we going? So I want to talk about, we talked about the parallel execution. We're gonna actually do an incremental. I didn't do the incremental, so I saved it for you, okay? And so we'll work on that and then we'll call it a day, okay? So one things we wanna do is we want to, look, say, guess what? I did some teaching or wrote the article and I did this copy, okay, right? We have both the sales order header and a sales order detail, right? So we need to create some. The problem is identity here, right? So now I need to do is I need to say, hey, guess what? Identity insert on because I want to insert some data. This is a identity column. This is just a description of the sales order as a text, right? I'm going to do an insert, right? And now we're going to run this, and hopefully I did it right. Maybe it's off. Always get it backwards. And now let's try this. Yep, it's gonna work this time. Explicit, I thought. When any insert is on, I thought I had it on. Well, let's try it again. On. Unless I made a mistake. Okay. Vision number and then execute. Explicit value for Denny. Oh, you know what? I'm being an idiot. I should have done this. Now I'm gonna scram for time. So what we're gonna do is I forgot this. I didn't test this, and of course this testing's the bane of all existence, right? I forgot that when you do identity insert, dope, you gotta do a column list too. That's what's killing me. So now what we need to do is put that in here and then we'll fix this real quick. Always fun to try to do live demos and then you know that you're gonna forget something, right? But it's all makes it more fun, you know that these are the problems you're gonna face in real life, right? So you can see I'm having fun, you're gonna have fun too, right? So we're gonna do this, and this is perfect now. And then I need to do the same thing for the header. And what we're doing is this table right here is a local table. I'm keeping track of the version numbers, right? See, here's the version number. And the last time I did this was 3.11 while I was writing about this, and I haven't got a chance to get back to it. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna script the table as insert into query window, right? And we need to get the column list because it's not going to work without a column list. And we're going to go back up here and we're going to put that in there. And we'll get rid of this. I'm going to worry about formatting another day, and I just need to put this down here. Okay, so we basically want to go ahead. Oops, come on, good enough. We're going to go ahead and then do the insert, and hopefully this works. I must select. So revision number. Oh, it didn't put in sales order ID. Sales order ID, dummy. I don't know why I did. Either I didn't cut and paste it or it messed up. So sales order ID, comma. Let's do this again. Okay, getting close. And again, this is, not really that complex of a framework, but there is some things to set up, right? So let's make sure. Okay. Sales order, revision number, order date, due date, modified date. The select list contains more items. Number select. That can't be it. Sales order header. Okay. Oh, okay, wait a minute. So this is here. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just want to try to get one of these to work. So, okay. So due date, ship date, order date, status, online ordering, purchase order, wait a minute, purchase order number. Where's sales order number? For some reason, it didn't put that in there. Didn't like me. So that's another one. Let's try this. Come on. Okay. Sales order number. Purchase order number. So it's purchase order number. Oh, did I get backwards? Sales order number, purchase order number, account number, custom ID, account number, custom ID, ship to, bill to, ship method, credit card approval, subtotal, tax amount, rate, comment, row good, modified date. Let's do this. Something stupid. Let's just cut and paste this and see what it's not lining up. Something is off. Once we figure it out, basically it's going to allow us to put a new record there. The change order capture change tracking will allow us to pull the version. And then remember this, the biggest thing to remember is that this is on the roadmap, but it's not there and it's easy enough to write. Guess what? Merge is not supported in the warehouse. What is a merge? We compare two tables. If there's a match, then it's an update, right? If it's on the source but not on the target, then it's an insert, right? And vice versa. If it's a delete, right? So Control C, and it depends on how you want to handle deletes, right? So it's saying that the not sales order, revision number, order date, so due date, right? Ship date, status, order flag, sales order number, purchase order number, count number, customer ID, ship to, bill to, ship method, credit card, subtotal, tax amount, freight, comment. Okay, row good and modified date. You don't see anything different, do you? That looks like it should be that. Try this again one more time. If not, I'm going to call it a day and we'll wrap it up. But let's do this. So execute. The select list for more contains more items than the insert list. So it's saying 1, 2, so sales order ID, revision number, order date, due date, ship date, status, online, sales order number, purchase order number. See, this sales order number, let's just do the select instead of this and see what's going on. I just want to show you one of them. Okay, so sales order number and then purchase order number. Okay, those are different, right? And then account numbers there, custom IDs there, ship to, bill to, Ship methods there. Credit card approval is no. Subtotal, tax amount, freight, total due. Oh, where's total due? Total due is there, but I think that's a calculated column. That's what's killing us. So get rid of total due. And guess what? I apologize for being stupid. Sometimes you never have enough time to do these demos ahead of time with work. And let's do this. Now this will work. Well, this is a real example. You'll have fun. Sales order cannot be bound as computed column. So sales order number, I don't need to. So we'll get rid of sales order number. And get rid of sales order number because I guess it's another computed, and then we're good to go. Last time I did this, I did it live with code into violation of unique cannot create duplicate keys. Oh, maybe it already put it in once. So let's do this. 8001. Okay. And execute. Okay, now it's saying that I don't like it because of this. Okay, all the way down. Okay, I just want to get one of these to work. Okay, so let's see if anything showed up. So let's go back here. Did it pick anything up new? Okay, it didn't. But anyways, let me show you the code that you're gonna have to use to do it. And I apologize for this part of demo. Last time it didn't work too, and I'm not getting there. I'm gonna definitely spend some time on this. So if we look at talks, and let's take a look at the code that you'll need to do, because that's the most important thing. Working this out is just the minutia, right? That everyone has to get through. So we're gonna do this guy, and the incremental is 24, and let's look at the code. Okay, so the change tracking, you're gonna have to turn it on, right? How do you do it? Use master, turn it on, right? It's only gonna keep 7 days. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, alter it for enable tracking the detail on the header, right? And then we can validate if it's on. And what we can do is we can validate the database is on, and then we can disable it. So that's how you turn on and off change tracking. Now, as for we don't have the code here, but we'll look at the code in the actual workspace. So if we go back to the workspace, okay, we can see that the venture works clear. I'm gonna go over these and I'm gonna wrap up in 2 minutes because it's almost out of time. So this one will just truncate everything and reload it. And remember, we want to look at the metadata logs, right? Okay, and we can look at that right now. If we do code and we do select star from metadata.logs. And again, remember, if you use the default coation, it's case sensitive, okay? You can also do case insensitive, but right now it's not a feature. Go look at my LinkedIn blog, it'll tell you how to do it. So this is going to show us all the entries, like all the ones that we ran, okay? And then see, this is refresh and refine. This is making the stage. So we actually put it into the stage and then refined updates. And this one's actually doing the copy. So it ran all those statements, which is awesome, right? Let's stop and close. We can also do the AdventureWorks, right? And this is the one I showed you that I generated with a generative I, in which we drop and add the table, okay? That's nothing to write home about. Last thing, the metadata. This is the most important one, okay? We're gonna create a schema, and then what we're gonna do is create the jobs table. And basically, for each one, we say, hey, it's 1.1, and this one's the build version, right? And the second one is dbo.error logged, right? So, and if we go all the way down, see if there's any more actual code down here. Okay, this is why I really want to show you. We're going to go ahead and turn on no count. We're going to get the old and new tracking ID from the tracking. And then we're going to get the tracking version and we're going to find the differences. Okay. And then we're going to say, okay, if the row count, if there's something in this result, then we're going to insert it into DBO, track tables. And we're going to also, this is the right outer join. So this is going to come back in the copy to statement. Okay, so we're going to not only update the tracking table, but this select statement is going to be written to that our staging. Okay, stage 0. Same thing with the other one for the other incrementals, right? We can see it there. And last but not least, we can take a look at, we get the logs, we talked about that. We also have data sets, okay? So data sets are basically which ones are going to be copied over, right? So we're going to build the data sets. So in raw, there's an address. So these are all the views, okay? And then in refined, if we look at it, we're writing dynamic code, right? Drop table with token. What is token? It's a stage, right? And same thing with the add statement. Create table token and the update statement, alter table. This is our refined but it's also going to have to be changed because token, see, it's based on token. Last but not least, controls. Basically, it tells you what stage you're in, okay? And then this view is the control table. We can see what's there. And then we can look at schemas. And so one of the things in here is there's a user-defined view that tells you, hey, guess what? Everything's a clustered index because it's column store, okay? So that's it. And last but not least, I'm just going to wrap it up, is the refine layer. And you can go through this yourself. I'll put this out in my repo, and I'll make sure that the incremental works. But we can see that we have raw, refined, stage 0, stage 1, stage 2. Those are the main data schemas we're using, okay? And I'm going to wrap it up now. Is there any questions? Because the main thing is that if you know how to use a metadata framework, basically it eliminates a lot of this work. If you had to do this for 800 data sets, it would be really, really painful. A bunch of references here. If you look at the slide deck, data factory, lakehouse, notebooks, data warehouse, deployment pipelines, mirroring. If you can get away with mirroring, eventually some of the stuff will be in mirroring. Go with it. If not, it's custom, like say IBM DB2. You're gonna have to write something yourself. Data gateway. If you're not using Copilot, please do. Change tracking, and a lot of stuff I do is expression language. Okay.